All right. Well, I guess that means the podcast is going.
We're going? I'm gonna hit you with the vine.
There's only one race. The human race. What about NASCAR?
I love Left at London.
Well, it's true. We're here on the bonus episode to learn about NASCAR. And
we got Victoria Scott back on to help us. Victoria, how's it going?
It's going well. Victoria. I'm coming to you live from sunny, freezing cold Reno, Nevada. It's great.
Ah, delightful.
I finally don't live in Texas, which is awesome.
I don't think of like Reno as being like a cold place off the top of my head. But
I think the city itself is at like 5,000 feet.
Oh wow!
4,500 feet. So really it's pretty cold, high desert.
It's slide 6, the Kodiak car, right next to the Hooters car, right next to the Coors and Miller cars.
We'll get there.
We got all the good stuff.
We will get there.
I did try to provide some of my own photography for these slides because I went to the NASCAR museum last year. It's actually really cool.
Hell yeah. Well, I mean,
absolutely go. Oh dear.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? Justin is dying.
Unfortunately,
if not dead already.
We have to extract as many podcasts from him as possible.
Yeah, yes. I know nothing about NASCAR, and so it's down to Victoria and Liam to save the podcast in its darkest hour.
Oh boy!
Wow. Well, hopefully I don't fucking completely ruin this. I already put in like 4 slides of hyperfocus about the cars specifically.
Slide 1, and the first one that I made is Corey LaJoie's face car, where he just has the hood have his face on it in like sort of photorealistic detail. So that's the sort of intellectual level that I'm operating at on this.
Similar to the film Cars, actually.
Absolutely. He is Lightning McQueen.
He's
but
also,
in real life.
For some reason, Owen Wilson uses him like a puppet.
That's true. That is true.
So what do you think when you think about NASCAR? I know for me, it's when
you love left turns so much, you refuse to invent a right turn.
Stop it. I, a sophisticated individual, unfortunately think of the car of tomorrow, which really NASCAR.
Which I did actually put in a slide about because I'm not NASCAR. Sold on it yet. Oh, you mean that? No, that was was that the car of? We have the car of tomorrow now. That was this like safer car.
Yeah,
I gotta look at my own. Yeah, I mean, in this case, it actually was. When I think of NASCAR, I think of being 4 or 5 years old and playing with Hot Wheels on a black oval-shaped rug in front of the television, watching the race. Like this is. Wow. For as ironically detached as I was from F1, NASCAR is genuinely like this has been my thing since I was a little child. I have a genuine love for this sport, and it's frustrating how poorly it's gone in recent decades.
You missed out on the real move, which is. You have to bleep that. You missed out on the real move, which is the playmat that looks like a little town with the roads
I had that
and
too.
stuff. That's the real move, as far as I'm concerned.
But in Victoria's case, the cars and everything else was just drifting through town like Initial D.
No, I didn't get into Japanese cars until later because I grew up in a little town, West Virginia, and it was pretty clear that imports were for gays.
Which is, of course, now why you like them.
Trend in the 80s.
Yeah, so I grew up wanting like a 57 Chevy when I was 6 years old, which is a depressing way to be a child. But, you know.
No, my dad had a 53 Bel Air he bought for $12.
Yeah, honestly, I would. I fucking would.
It had holes in the floor. Lots of them.
Still would.
Yeah, Super Lagaria.
It makes it easier to go ice fishing that way.
That's right. You don't even have to get out of the thing.
That's what my dad is good at.
Off-road in it, you can like shovel your way out without having to get out if you get stuck.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. So what is NASCAR, is my question, and how did NASCAR start? To which, next slide, please. We have to go back in time.
Is that my cue or? Am I running this or what?
I don't fucking know.
Yeah,
Listen. I think you are, but I think also I wrote some slides. But I say wrote, I mean I found a picture and I put in 2 sentences. I kind of figured Liam would fill in the rest, like his general knowledge.
Yeah, I will do my best. In case you're wondering why Liam didn't write these slides, because Liam's been through some shit in the last couple weeks.
Yeah,
So,
sorry to hear about that, Liam.
Yeah, I will not be talking about it at this time, but I appreciate the thoughts and concerns, and I can't wait to talk about the Gen 4 cars. Because I love the everything is deforming because it's made of rubber because we're cheating.
Yes.
So why do we have some cars on a beach?
I know you do. It's a great picture. The top-down one.
Yeah. Well, I did this one, so I'll just go into it real quick. NASCAR stands for the National Association of Stock Car Auto Racing. The whole thing was started in the post-war years. I think it began in 1948. I think I have that on a future slide. But basically, the initial urge was just people who were organizing all of these small races kind of throughout the South.
And why were they doing that? It's because they hated the cops.
Yes.
These are rum runners and bootleggers.
Oh yeah, Junior Johnson, who was like one of the first champions, was so good at bootlegging that everyone knew he did it, and he never went to jail for it. He went to jail for IRS shit. He didn't go to jail
for the Capone thing.
They totally did, but he never went to jail for bootlegging because he was so goddamn good at it. But yeah, so that started off there were all of these informal races happening, and people would routinely get screwed over when they would compete. The sponsors would leave with the purse money, or spectators would get screwed out of the.
You're sponsored by Shady Jim's scrapyard.
So yeah, they standardized all of the rules, and the initial racing was literally just dirt tracks and cars you could buy. They didn't have this photo is from I think the early 50s at Daytona Beach, which they literally just raced on the beach. And I'm pretty sure at the time of this photo, they didn't have roll cages or anything. It was literally just go buy a car, drive it,
paint a number on it. Yeah. And then just go nuts.
Yeah. And the other thing that I'd like to note too is nowadays we've moved into a more modern era where the cars are not stock cars. Obviously they're purpose-built tube chassis vehicles. But they all have to follow this
because there's no S.
They all have to follow the same formula to build these new
which is annoying. It is annoying.
I see what you're doing, and I'm going to preempt you. No.
What I'm saying here is that NASCAR is not only similar to Formula One, it's also better.
That's not the case.
I've been on both episodes. I can say this. NASCAR is way cooler than F1. F1, if the cars touch each other, they explode into a shrapnel of 4 trillion pieces. And so everyone's too scared to pass. And the only way that passing does happen is when Toto calls up the race control guys and he's like, hey, fix the race because I don't like the results. And in NASCAR, there were people whose careers were made based on shoving people out of their way with the front end of their car, which is absolutely king shit. I have a whole slide on him. It's in here.
Well, so you make Formula One is they give you an award for best passer, and they only pass 6 times.
Yeah, there's one pass in the middle of the race, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, look!"
And it happens
the other car. I'm gonna make a counterpoint here, which is they have turns that go left, but also right.
NASCAR also has 2 road courses on the calendar, bare minimum.
Yes, they do.
And they've been adding in road course ovals, so they'll do Daytona International, if you're familiar with the 24 Hours of Daytona, where they run the intersection of the course, they've been doing that roval layout much more recently. So you get the high-speed banked corners that NASCAR is known for, combined with technical left and right turns. And it's hilarious because the cars are really heavy and don't have much aero, and they're not meant for it. But they do turn both ways. It's Infineon and Watkins Glen are the 2 that they still race at for road courses.
Watkins Glen is a fucking great time. I will say that.
Oh god, yeah.
If you ever what race should I go to? I cannot emphasize enough. My first NASCAR race was Watkins Glen. I think that's a great foot to start on.
Mine was actually the feeder series, which is now called Xfinity, but it's like the tier below.
Yeah.
But they raced at Mid-Ohio, which is Honda's road course out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's like literally cornfields for 30 miles and then one of the best road coursing facilities in the world. It was absolutely batshit. It was so much fun. And people, pass and crash constantly, as it should happen in auto racing instead of like, oh, this person's got pole, they're going to win the season now.
Listen, we've articulated a lot of the problems with Formula One, but I'm still, I don't know. I know so little about NASCAR that in my head it is just you watch an enormous pack of cars drive around in a circle for 6 hours, and occasionally there's a massive fireball.
I will say, as a television product, and I hate admitting this, F1 is a superior television product.
As it's a better Netflix series, I'll say that.
It wouldn't be if they let Victoria and I produce it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If you somebody give me a budget and I will make the best goddamn NASCAR Drive to Survive I've ever seen.
So we can go back further and we can talk about these rum runners. And next slide, please. This car is just a stock car, but it's not.
Hitler, what are you doing here?
Yeah. Also, it's being driven by Hitler. It's being driven by Adolf Hitler.
I mean, he's got to get to work too.
I'm just a simple country Hitler. But it also has like a tuned engine and a big tank in the back that you can fill with rum or bourbon or whatever in order to drive it around without the cops noticing. Because we got to talk about prohibition. Because this is sort of the as you say, Victoria, the origin of NASCAR is guys driving around really fast to get away from the cops and then getting bored when alcohol becomes legal again.
Prohibition ends what, 1933 or 1931?
31, I believe.
I think.
I'm pretty sure that, like, as the Depression was hitting, they were like, we
need
to. I think that, and also just like, it's interesting living through a time of societal collapse, watching them open up the valves. Like, okay,
like marijuana.
Which pressure release valves can we open up right now so that everybody doesn't go batshit insane? So that's probably helps hasten its demise.
You can have booze back. Please do not be communist or fascist.
Yeah. The fascist part they're a lot softer on in the US usually.
Of course. I'm thinking about FDR's triangulation here between, like, I don't know, the Huey Long future where everybody has like 6 Ramos gin fizzes a day out of a replicator, and the like I don't know, Charles Lindbergh president god emperor for life future.
We should also point out, it's not in the slides I don't think, but NASCAR has a pretty ugly history of union busting.
Oh yeah, I didn't put that in there because I was trying to make it sound cool.
I did want to acknowledge it at least before people get mad at us in the comments.
Oh yeah,
that's what happens. True. It's shameful. We know.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of that too is like, so Bill France Sr. is the guy who started this whole thing, and that entire family runs this like a kingdom. It's not
like the NASCAR McMahons.
Yes, yeah. It initially, like, it did have decent intent, but it very rapidly turned into he runs it with an iron fist, and like people have gotten, you can, like, even in the modern era, people have gotten huge fines or had their careers kind of sidetracked for speaking out against this, whereas people who like say slurs live still have careers and are quite popular actually.
Well, to be fair, he only said it on a video game.
Yeah, that was his gamer moment, and then it ended up having absolute. I'm talking about Kyle Larson. He's later. He's a new guy. He dropped the worst word during an iRacing stream during the pandemic for no apparent reason at all.
No, none at all.
And had absolutely no repercussions come about as a result. Like he still has his career.
Yeah, he kind of got half punished for like 6 weeks, but you could tell from the start that NASCAR wasn't serious.
Oh no.
Right.
No, it's a much more serious crime to speak out against, like, the race cars or the fact that the calendar isn't set up well or that they're screwing over their feeder series drivers. But if you say slurs, they're totally cool with it.
So who the hell is Bill France Sr.?
A bastard. He's a bastard man.
Okay, but like apart from that,
I mean, he started the concept of NASCAR. He was the guy who saw all these individual races happening and was like, "What if we standardize payouts standardized payouts and insurance and got like group sponsors and all that kind of stuff and set up like a formal calendar?" And this was in '48.
And then what he did was he took the profits and used it to buy babies from which he drinks the blood of.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, that's how it started. Was he was the guy? Yeah.
Sometimes you just gotta drink some baby blood.
But the other thing too that like so the first like 20 years or so of this. Actually, can we go to the next slide because I want to show a picture here. I'm proud of these. These are pictures I took at the NASCAR Museum in Charlotte. There's me. I wanted to be the first person to stick a picture of herself into the slide deck for there's your problem episode.
I am wearing my NASCAR Hall of Fame t-shirt.
Hell yeah. It's a great, like, legitimately, it is a cool as hell museum.
Yeah, it is. Charlotte is worthless and terrible, but you should go to that. Dude.
It's not the worst. It's not as bad as Nashville. Nashville's the worst city in the United States. No, Nashville's the worst city in the United States. Charlotte is much better.
Huh? I'm reading here that Bill France Sr., campaign manager for George Wallace.
Oh.
Yeah, not a great guy, as it turns out. George Wallace, was he standing in the schoolhouse door? Or am I thinking of someone else?
Yeah, I don't know if he was. I think he was. But either way, very much the sort of like the
racist
the gamer candidate, the last of the Southern Democrats to like run for like national office. Yeah,
he ran as a Dixiecrat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a pretty good political read on the France family, from what I understand.
Who again will get their just desserts in hell.
So what kinds of cars are we looking at?
Yeah. So the going clockwise from the top left, the first one is what's considered a Gen 1 car. So that is when it was strictly stock. So the cars were basically you bought them off the factory floor, and towards the end of this era ran from the inception of the sport in 1948 through 1966. They were basically just like privateers or dealerships financing them for the most part. Because the whole point of NASCAR in this era, from a manufacturer perspective, was like dealers would be like, "Hey, check out this Chrysler that you can literally go buy in our showroom. It just won a race." And this is like the beginning kind of the muscle car era in the U.S.
Yeah, so you put a big like painted sign, not even a decal at this point, on the side of area Dixiecrat local gentry dealership name.
Yes.
Go here to buy your Cadillac and reinforce white supremacy. Sure.
Yeah, I mean that's literally. I mean, I don't know if that's the exact dealership on this Chrysler in the top left.
It's Beauregard's dealership.
But yeah, that was basically the way it was. That's a Chrysler 300, and like it was literally just roll the car out. I think towards the end of this era, they started beefing up the rear axles and suspension slightly because they kept having them rip out in the middle of the races. But like pretty much it was just go buy a car and then race it around. And during this period, manufacturer support was still pretty slim. Right up until about the end of it, Hudson was the first one to support racing in, I want to say the early to mid 50s, the Hornet.
Yes.
So Cars didn't make that up. Sorry.
No.
My only into this is the movie Cars 2. This is what podcasting has done to me.
Cars, great movie. Owen Wilson gives a performance of a lifetime. All right, name a better Owen Wilson performance. Go on. I'll give you 30 seconds.
Cars 2.
Yeah. You said Cars 2 before, Alice.
Oh, I thought you meant Cars itself. All right, fine. Fucking Zoolander. Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou.
If Cars 2 was so good, how come they didn't make a Cars 2 too?
They made a Cars 3, dumbass.
Oh, that's a good point, yeah.
They also made Planes, which had a Native American helicopter in it.
Was it named Apache? Just to...
I forget what it was named, but like... Yeah, I'm not sure about the sort of like ethnography or like the demographics of the world. Like, I think about the prospect of Christopher Columbus, who was a car coming across the Atlantic to discover helicopter civilizations.
Oh wow, that. Okay. For more, please see the Book of Mormon.
Absolutely.
I do know that there's like canonically World War II in the Cars universe. So I mean,
oh yeah, and we know that warships are like people. They have souls in the Cars movies. So like kamikaze planes were like planes flying themselves into ships that were also guys.
Oh,
I mean, that is basically just war, though, right?
Person?
Absolutely.
We've basically
what were the
just
doing between 1931 and 1945. That's question.
Yeah, how did this like Mercedes 770 end up in Argentina after the
war? I believe canonically the answer with the Minions is that they went into a cave and literally stayed there until after World War II. In order to clear up that question,
if you will.
No,
down Minion bunker.
Oh my god.
Das war ein Befehl.
I'm pretty sure that if your movie raises the ethical question of what were your characters doing during World War II, maybe you shouldn't make it. But what do I know?
I thought the Minions' deal, right, was that they sought out the like evil mastermind of their age.
Yeah,
and they missed Hitler.
That is literally.
Actually,
I believe
Stalin
how they
was worse than Hitler.
I just think canonically the Minions then still participated in dozens of genocides
crimes against humanity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But like, okay, maybe they didn't like serve Hitler, but maybe that's only because they found a more evil guy than Hitler, like pound for pound. So they like all of the Minions were in the fucking Ustasia or something.
Holy shit, the Minions are Dutch.
The Minions famously present at the Cambodian killing fields.
Yeah, the Minions were in the Belgian Congo. Absolutely.
Anyway, so the next picture is a Generation 2 vehicle.
This is a podcast about NASCAR.
Although this car does kind of look a bit like a Minion.
Don't ever say that again. Because it's actually... So that car is... that's Dale Earnhardt's Wrangler jeans machine. And the Minions do wear denim, so you're not wrong. So please never repeat that again.
It's yellow and blue, and it looks like a Minion.
Anyway, that's a Gen 2 car. I'm not engaging with that. I'm sorry.
Literal Minion death cult.
Oh, God damn it. That's a Gen 2 car. They got modified bodies around then. They started having, some concessions to driver safety, although not many. They still had body panels this time, so it was still like they had to resemble, a stock car. And it was when it sort of got a bit more standardized. This was from 1967 to 1980, and this was really the growth period for the sport. Then we got Gen 3, which is the Mountain Dew car.
This is like accidentally invented. Like, to what extent is this driving the invention of the muscle car, and to what extent is it just being carried by it, is my question.
I would say it was kind of symbiotic, right? Like it was one of the things.
Agree with that. Yeah.
One of the things about Gen 2 that was interesting is, so if you're familiar with the, we'll put it in Cars 2 terms, the King, the car with the big wing on the back. That was actually a real car developed in the 70s by Plymouth.
The Roadrunner, right?
Yeah, it was the Plymouth Roadrunner. Specifically, the Roadrunner was the base car.
Right, there you go.
The Superbird was the one that they built specifically for NASCAR. And it was a homologation special that they built just enough of to get to compete in NASCAR, and it had this crazy aero package. It would have competed longer, but NASCAR was like, don't get too cute. They basically effectively banned it.
Once again,
just trying to like... translate like car manufacturers one-to-one, so you're like, Plymouth is Lancia.
Yes.
And I'm just gonna go through.
Yes, that is exactly what it is, basically.
We have all these specials ready for homologation, but it'll take 2 days to show them to you.
Just have one car in a hall of mirrors.
Yeah, Plymouth and Lancia actually are the same company. They just share a factory. It's like one Delta Integrale,
technically
one
speaking,
of these.
You're correct, because Plymouth got bought by Chrysler, and then Chrysler merged with Fiat, who had bought Lancia, and they're all part of Stellantis now. So there's like 4 companies, and they are actually the same one.
Same reason all your sunglasses are made by one company.
Tech, whoever.
Luxottica, I think they're called.
There we go.
I love the wealth of choices that capitalism provides me with. Anyway, so yeah, I would say like during this period, the whole like kind of muscle car thing, they fed off each other, right? Like they were still stock enough that they drove consumer sales. A lot of manufacturers were getting involved around this time. Through the 50s and stuff, they were definitely helping push development of faster cars, more muscle car looking vehicles because of NASCAR, because that was kind of your big domestic racing series.
At this point, America had no traffic laws, was PvP enabled.
And we were better as a people for it.
Drunk driving was fine and funny, actually.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a based time to drive. But yeah, so after this, we go into the Mountain Dew car. That's actually a Buick Regal, believe it or not. That's from 1981 to 1991. They standardized the wheelbase this time, so it's 110 inches. The cars got more aerodynamic, if you can believe that brick labeled Mountain Dew
spoiler.
Is aerodynamic. That's considered aerodynamic.
It's got a tiny little like flick of a spoiler. That's the air just like goes straight over the brick and then just like perfectly glances off that.
Yeah, and then the final picture, which is the one of me with the rainbow car, is Gen 4, which is unequivocally the best era of NASCAR. Absolutely. Because it was when they were just like, you know what, fuck it, and they said, okay, everything's a tube frame. You can use wind tunnels. Here's a throw, 700, 800 horsepower into the car, and kind of
Americans will really just be like, downforce is a state of mind.
Yeah, yes. And it was awesome.
Hi, Alice. It's called "There's No Replacement for Displacement."
Yeah. The racing in this era was, and this is when I grew up, that was my favorite race car because I was gay before I knew it, obviously. But it was genuinely like the sport had the biggest personalities. It had the coolest cars. It had really good track, like it had a good track calendar. I mean, this was when I remember how NASCAR's cultural hold at this point, and granted, I did grow up in West Virginia, but still, I remember my dad was in like a fantasy NASCAR pool at his work that I would help him pick drivers for every weekend, because it was literally like, it was a sport on par with, I don't know, maybe if not the NFL and the MLB, it was at least like an NHL. You know what I mean? Like it had massive cultural sway. And it was also just entertaining as hell to watch. And then after that, it all went downhill. And then we got the Car of Tomorrow. Liam, you were right about that. In 2007, that lasted till 2012.
What is the Car of Tomorrow?
I have more on it later. Okay. There are pictures and stuff, and I kind of explain why it ruined the whole sport. But it's ugly as shit.
The Minions drive it.
Yeah, it was bad. I'll get more into it later. Then 2013 to 2021, we had another car, and now we've got the next gen car, which is independent rear suspension.
The car of the day after tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah, we're back to a spec platform now for the 2021 season, but the cars are actually allowed to look different. I'll get into all that later. I just wanted to show off these 4 because this to me is like the crux of what this is. This represents NASCAR's sort of rise from like a bunch of ex-moonshine runners to like a sport that Ronald Reagan attended in 1980. Like it was genuinely huge for a while. And I think a lot of people outside of the US kind of miss that. So that's my spiel.
I forget that the US is so large that a thing can be big there and pretty much nowhere else and still be big.
Yeah, this was like American cricket. So
boring to watch and weirdly racist.
The NFL or cricket or both. But you're not wrong.
Venn diagram that is just 3 circles directly overlaid.
That's right.
Yeah, we can go on to the next slide if you want. Sorry, I feel bad to drive it. But just like this is my passion.
It's fine. Roz is dead, actually.
Yeah, Roz is dead. I'm an idiot. I'm still thinking about Minions.
I'm trying to pilot Roz like he's a 7-Eleven worker, and I'm there at 2 a.m. just trying to get some cigarettes.
That's some fantastic grass mowing there to do the American flag and the sort of like lawn apron there. That's great work.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and they also cut the shape of the track itself into the infield.
Yes, tailgating a NASCAR race is the most fun you can ever possibly have in the United States of America.
What is tailgating? Sorry.
Do you not tailgate?
All
right. Okay. I guess
I haven't invented it in Europe.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense that that's an American thing. You show up hours before a sports match, you get shit-faced drunk, and then you attend that sports match. And in NASCAR, you can bring your RV to the track and tailgate in the infield.
Yeah, and you can also get there like 3 days early and then just continue. Like you can just basically mainline Bud Light for like 3 or 4 days while there are race cars racing around you constantly for like qualifying and practice and test setup and the feeder series and all that stuff. So you basically just get V8s piped directly into your soul while blitzed drunk in an RV for like 3 days.
Explains some things.
I like how you're not speaking German right now because you're welcome.
It's gonna look like a Ralph Steadman drawing in there, man.
It does.
Yeah. Yeah, but instead of
I have a powerful like fucking psychic image of how this smells.
Motor oil, yeah.
Yeah, I will say like these cars all run like race fuel and they don't have any emissions regulations, so it smells.
About the people.
Oh no, you can't smell them over the fucking enormous V8s just outputting like an entire small airport's carbon emissions for a year just around you in a circle. It's great. It smells lovely. I love it.
NASCAR.
I like it.
Yeah, so how did NASCAR get big in addition to the car changes? These two things explain it. So on top, obviously, this is Daytona Superspeedway, which was built when they built in the fifth. I want to say the fifth. I didn't put the date in here because I'm an idiot. But it was built sometime like in the 50s and 60s.
I believe the 50s, yeah.
Yeah, and it was basically.
Maybe, I want to say.
Yeah, it was basically like NASCAR saying like we want to run ridiculously fast stuff. It has this tri-oval design, so kind of no matter where you're sitting in the stands, you can see as much of the track as possible.
It's also worth noting, I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to say, Alice, as like an idea, the largest college football stadium in the United States holds like 120,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
The largest racetracks in the United States hold upwards of 300,000.
American Coliseum. They should flood the infield and recreate naval battles
They
in there.
probably could.
Yeah, they got this whole big pond over here.
Yes, you want to know? Oh,
pretty massive stadiums.
I'm sorry. You want to know a funny story about that big pond in the Daytona infield? They accidentally flooded it when they were doing construction, and Bill France Sr. was like, "Cool, we'll do powerboat races in it," and left it because it was just like, "Fuck it, more attractions. Why not?" So yeah, it's not naval battles, but it's pretty cool because then they just strap a giant V8 to a boat and like.
I will say one thing: the United States of America is perhaps the most country in the history of the world. Like of all the nations that have existed, America is certainly the most one of them.
I mean, they're very, like. I think anybody who's familiar with me on Twitter knows that I'm not exactly a raging jingoist, but I will admit, like, NASCAR gets me to be like, oh yeah, America's pretty fucking cool. Just for a moment, just for like when I just clear my mind and I have head empty and I just think about NASCAR, I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool, honestly. So what else was cool that NASCAR did to make themselves bigger? In 1971, when tobacco companies were banned from advertising on TV, Reynolds Tobacco was like, hey, what if we called this the Winston Cup and gave you a ton of money? So then that lasted for like 25 or 30 years.
Much like F1. What if this was the last refuge of you being able to think about how cool cigarettes were while you were watching TV?
Yep. And it was largely Reynolds' involvement that, made Bill France kick all the smaller circuits, the like less than 100-mile races or the remaining dirt tracks and stuff, and really focus on making the sport like a a made-for-TV
powerhouse,
spectacle.
yeah.
And then their first TV appearance was in 1979. There was actually a fight at the end of the race. Everybody got super hyped because it was the coolest shit. Like, a bunch of cars race around for like 3 hours, and then the dudes crash at the very end, and then they get in a fist fight. What is not to love? My God.
There is in my head,
where she spoke the truth.
In my head, I have in the sort of mental cloud for NASCAR, I have the words "the big one," right?
Oh, there's a whole slide for that. Don't worry.
Okay.
I put that in here. But anyway, then Ronald Reagan attended a race in 1980, and that basically, like, the sport becomes part of the cultural lexicon for the next 20 years. So then, can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So
look at those sponsors.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Also through this area, so that top image is that's actually another display at the Charlotte Museum, which again is cool as hell. Just go to it. But that car right in the middle there, which
driving
was
number 7, the Femboy Hooters car.
that car in the middle there, the number 9 Coors car, was from the quote-unquote aerodynamic era. But what was happening during this period is the cars were getting insanely batshit fast. So Bill Elliott with that car in 1987 recorded a speed of 212 miles an hour at Daytona.
In that brick?
Yes. And
add more engine.
Yeah, legitimately.
Sorry. Out for Harley Irving.
The engine from where? EMD?
It was just it was carbureted still. I mean, this is just what Americans can do when you tell them, hey, we don't have emissions laws to worry about, and here's a V8. And they're like, all right, cool. We'll do 212 miles an hour in this like Thunderbird held together with like PVC grade roll cage. Why not? In any case, though, if your car is doing 212 miles an hour at a closed oval with a bunch of people, like 300,000 people, all sitting right next to the track, what's your biggest concern? And it's that the car
not being cool enough.
Yes. It's that the car basically becomes airborne, flies into the fence, and then kills your whole audience. I believe that there was another episode of this that you did about when that happened, and it killed like a bunch of people.
Yeah, they also made that car out of magnesium.
That's
just
true.
A great time.
But that car wasn't going 212 miles an hour. So imagine if it had been made out of magnesium and it was doing 212 miles an hour. Which these weren't magnesium, but still. So what they did around this time...
The last thing you see is the Femboy Hooters wind coming towards you.
Not a bad way to go, honestly.
We sponsor a NASCAR team, and the last thing you see is a fucking hood with buysnooze.com scything towards you at net height.
Do you remember when we were going to sponsor that roller hockey team?
Oh, right, yeah.
But so literally, actually, the same weekend that Bill Elliott hit 212 miles an hour in qualifying, Bobby Allison, who was another big driver at the time, got his car thrown into the fence at about 210-ish miles an hour and almost killed, hundreds of people. It was by sheer luck he didn't. He also was fine after this. He was like, well, it happens.
Walk it off.
Yeah.
So NASCAR's creation around this time was to invent the restrictor plate, which I've helpfully included a diagram of, which is literally just a big metal plate with some small holes in it that chokes out the motor.
So instead of restricting the emissions, you restrict the opposite of that, the, I guess, emissions, the intake.
Yes. So NASCARs and I have a lot in common in that we both love to be choked out. And basically the idea behind this is you artificially limit the power and speed that the cars can achieve. And this is what they do through the modern era at super speedways. So Talladega and Daytona, these big 2.5 mile long, huge banking, 300,000 spectator events.
You could make the engine smaller.
Yeah, but then you have to change the formula, right?
And then we'd be doing F1, which we don't do because we're Americans.
Yes. Because the idea is to run a standardized engine the whole time.
Are cooler. And your stupid fucking, it's a turbocharged four cylinder. Remember when we had V10s? Neither do I.
Listen. There is a special kind of like satisfaction in watching something that is effectively a lawnmower engine that has just been fucking Mercedesed until it's going 200 miles an hour.
No, and no one's allowed to try and assassinate Lewis Hamilton, as cool as he is. And in NASCAR, there's still good old-fashioned assassination attempts, goddammit.
Bill France the third up there in the stands with a sniper rifle.
I mean, yeah, also just like when you come to the US someday, I'm gonna drag you to a NASCAR race, Alex, just so you can experience this, because like there is nothing like 43 V8s all at wide open throttle ripping past you.
Symphony of power.
It is just it's fucking magical. It's the best shit.
Why wasn't Marinetti born an American, you know?
I don't know. Nature is cruel.
All of these futurists who are like, you know, the fucking transcendent power of the machine, and they're all born in fucking Italy.
Yes.
Well, to be fair, if we had Italians designing NASCARs, then it would be a lot. We'd only get 43 cars running on the same lap at once for like 3 laps. And then it'd be like the 10 stragglers left who are firing on like 3 cylinders. All right, I'm making a list here. So I've pissed off Italians and Dutch so far this episode. I need to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
In any case, this leads to pack racing, which, next slide. Alice, you mentioned the big one.
I did. Are these they?
These are the big ones, yes. Pretty much. So what happens is you take like, the pack usually splits into like 2 groups. There are 43 cars in a race. There's like a front 20 and a back 20. What happens if you take 20 cars doing 195 miles an hour with roughly 4 inches of space between them on all sides? And then you just have them race for 500 miles.
Somebody has a good time.
Yeah, I particularly like car number 6 in the bottom right, which is going to its home planet.
Yes, also that's a Koch Industries car, which is why I included it. Because it's funny to see those ghouls get their car smashed up.
Absolutely.
Yes. But yeah, this is the big one. It happens every super speedway event. This is where the majority of like... It's weird. NASCAR's got a very strange relationship with this, because for a while, like, they were using this as advertising. Like, it was a big crash and it was entertaining and exciting.
Much the same way the NFL used to have
big compilations.
Yeah, were they incredibly dangerous, and was it inevitable somebody was going to die from it? Of course, but it helped fill seats.
Yeah, also you had the like sports medicine thing where anything more advanced than walk it off was only invented 5 years ago.
Pretty much. And I will admit, when I was like 4 years old, this was the coolest thing that could happen in the entire world. Like, I would watch a race for 3 hours, and then there'd be a huge car crash. And I lived in this era where like death was not something I had really quite conceptualized yet.
Yeah, you were
so
4.
It was just it was just like, cool. A bunch of cars crash and then everybody walks away, because that's mostly what happened during this era, by sheer luck. Until next slide. That's okay.
NASCAR's 9/11.
Yes. It truly was America's 9/11.
all we need to really complete this is to tell you that like fucking a Supreme Court justice has died right now.
Oh god. I mean, it doesn't matter anymore, though. The thing that made that so darkly funny was because that meant that we're going to enter the next era. And if another one dies, it's like, oh, cool, the decisions are now going to be like, what, 7-2 instead of 6-3?
Yeah, that's like an end zone dance at this point.
Basically.
But still, though.
It's just running up the score for what we all know is inevitable. But yeah, so Dale Earnhardt...
I'm gonna say the date. February 18th, 2001.
I remember watching this live. Jesus.
I watched this. I was 5, and I saw it live.
I was 10. 9.
Yeah. This was like I was too young for Challenger, and this was still pre 9/11, so this was basically my Challenger, I think.
You're like, this is the worst thing that's ever going to happen to America or me.
Pretty much.
This is pretty fucking depressing, Alice.
No, I'm saying that's funny to think that as a kid, and then 7 months later.
Well, I think, honestly, as a 5-year-old, this affected me more than 9/11 did, because I couldn't conceptualize, like when you're younger,
one of your heroes die in front of you. It's a lot different than watching planes come. You're aware that people are dead in there, but like you didn't quite see, you know what I mean?
I wasn't rooting for all 3,000 of those people every week as a 5-year-old to win a race.
No, also 9/11 wasn't being filmed by like broadcast quality cameras. It was like 3 dudes on camcorders and then some helicopter cameras that were in really low resolution. You couldn't really see shit.
I assure you could see the damn crash, unfortunately.
You could see enough. Yeah, I remember my mom tuning into that. You could see plenty. But of course, the thing with that is, like, my mom, to her credit, was like, hey, maybe I won't expose my 6-year-old to the worst mass death event that, has ever really been televised in the US. Whereas this was like live television, and I just watched his car hit the wall, and then everybody was sad. And I was like, oh, fuck. And that, of course, shatters the illusion that, like, all of your heroes are unkillable, and that, everybody who's racing is, like, doing this because it's fun and cool, and not, like, there's this mortal peril. So anyway, February 18th, 2001, it's the final lap. His team is on their way and ends up placing 1-2 at the Daytona 500, and he gets in a tussle kind of back in the pack, goes straight up into the wall, and dies of a basilar skull fracture basically instantly upon hitting the wall. This actually came with a rash of other deaths in the same time frame. There were
These things always seem to, like Ratzenberger and Senna. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there were 4 or 5 other deaths that happened in like a year-long span. Adam Petty was one of them, who was of the Petty family. He was the first 4th generation like athlete in any sport in modern history, and he died at age 19 in a practice crash. Like, the cars were really fast, and they had not. Basically, you've reached the point now where your helmet, your helmet shatters your neck. So what happens in a really bad, the way you get a basilar skull fracture in a car crash is you're wearing a helmet, and and you're wearing shoulder straps. Like in this first picture, the guy on the right is what you don't want to happen. Basically,
it's
the
like
helmet,
mega whiplash.
Yeah, the helmet basically just like the weight of that combined with the restraining force of the straps basically just shatters the base of your skull like immediately. You die. The result, the invention for this was the Hans device, which had already been invented, but Dale notably didn't like wearing it because it wasn't comfy for him, I guess.
But he thought he restricted his ability to sort of process information all at once.
Yeah.
He also wore his seatbelts really loose, I remember reading. And this set off sort of like a years-long, like sort of existential struggle for the seatbelt manufacturer, who was like, because NASCAR is like this, one guy and his like company of 5 people, who was getting death threats because he just killed Dale Earnhardt. Until it was proven that he hadn't.
Right.
Yeah, he still ended up stepping down from the company because like it was something Simpson. I forget his first name, but of course the company is called Simpson Seatbelts because, as you correctly pointed out, all companies in the U.S. are one dude and 5 people.
Yeah. Yep. Speaking of one dude, I guess we should talk about Dale Earnhardt because who was Dale Earnhardt?
The greatest driver to ever live, F1 or NASCAR or dirt track racing or whatever. I will die on this hill. Besides maybe Senna.
Yeah, I mean,
how I feel.
I'd say Colin McRae probably deserves a spot up there too.
Sure.
Sebastian
Great
Loeb,
driver,
maybe.
Terrible pilot.
Oof, Jesus. Sorry, I'm still in the too soon era for Colin McRae because I played again. It was one of those things. It's like
the video games,
cool video games and like cool rally racing, a new sport to get into, and then it's like, nah, sorry, your heroes are all. Your heroes are all just going to die right in front of your eyes, which is, I guess, a great way to be introduced to kind of American life as an adult. But you know, but yeah, Dale was definitely like one of the best drivers of a car to have ever lived. He was also like a huge personality for this sport because you either loved him or you hated him because he had a divisive driving style. He was literally known as the Intimidator. There were some questionable choices he would make when he would bump people to win. It worked and he would win. And of course, like the everybody involved with NASCAR as an organization loved this shit because it was hugely polarizing and got people talking. So the sport was really like, it was more carried on his shoulders than I think anybody really realized until he died. And then it sort of became obvious that, not only did they have to stop killing drivers so often because it was ridiculous to be
Jeff
losing.
Gordon is not the same.
Admittedly, like he was, so Dale was kind of my villain as a kid. Like I rooted for Jeff, which meant that I was gay. Okay, he had a rainbow car. I couldn't help it.
I was a damn kid. I was a bastard then. I'm a bastard now.
With the black car too, like black and orange. I mean, yeah, no, that's heel shit. I understand that and I respect it.
And everybody, I mean, and for what it's worth, like all reports of him are that he was a cool as fuck guy, and like he generally, like he had beef with people on the track, but generally people, said he was nice and stuff, like off the track.
And he back in the 90s, when people in the South, I don't want to say white people in the South, were really leaning into the sort of heritage, not hate shit. He had some very thoughtful things to say about, the rebel flag. And Junior has some really good stuff to say politically.
Yeah. Yeah,
genuinely. He's not a communist or anything, but like his dad's, he's Dale Earnhardt. Like,
genuinely like a good person from what I've heard from accounts.
Right.
So the sport loses its biggest name instantly on live television. And beats 9/11 to the punch in terms of national tragedies. And so the next changes that came about were, Hans device. I have a picture here of the safer barrier, which is basically they put like really high grade foam in the walls so that instead of running into a concrete wall, you run into a wall that has a little tiny bit of give so that it's not all just directly transferred to your skull.
Right.
And then the next change that came about was the car of tomorrow in 2006.
Which ruined racing.
And that ruined NASCAR, basically. That was the death of the sport.
We understand why. We know. Shut the hell up.
Yeah. No, well, see, here's the thing. There have been no deaths since Dale died. They did actually...
Ever? Like, at all?
Not
as a result of... not during a race.
Yes.
What's his name? Ran over the pit crew guy.
We actually conquered death through the car of tomorrow.
Tony Stewart killed a guy.
Yeah, I can't get the novel coronavirus. I'm inside the car of tomorrow.
Yes.
But like Ryan, if you go on YouTube and watch the footage from, what was it, last year, Victoria, the Ryan Larson crash?
I think it was 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yeah. That was one of the worst wrecks I've ever seen, and he lived.
Yeah. Well, it's like Grosjean in F1. Like, that would have killed any driver in any era in any car before that, and the dude walked away with like some scars on his hands and then continued racing the rest of the season. So, from a safety perspective, they did do it well. The problem is, next slide, please. We went from the car on the left, which is the most hacky, insane shit you can possibly do to aerodynamics, to make a car.
This car has eaten a bee.
Yeah. I'm so happy to see you.
I suppose we should talk about the sort of the ethos of cheating in NASCAR, right?
It's good and everybody does it. Shut the hell up.
Like,
you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
That's the damn truth.
I mean, basically. Well, this was like the wind tunnel crazy as shit era.
I thought Victoria was going to be like, actually, cheating is unethical. And then I was going to have the podcast right here.
No, you thought, I'm offended you think that I think cheating isn't cool. Are you kidding me? Jesus. I'm not a liberal, for God's sake. No, but you went from these like crazy batshit insane cars that were taking advantage of like side pull aero. Like if you've ever driven a van next to a semi truck on the interstate, you'll kind of feel like how the semi truck will kind of pull you along. Like they were taking full advantage of this effect with these like asymmetrical, just completely deformed cars that were going way too fast. And then they were like, no, you can't do that anymore. So they gave us the car on the right, and they all looked identical, and they all had the exact same setup.
Far worse for it.
They're like painted on grills.
Yeah. Well, and I purposely picked an example with a Ford and a Chevy next to each other. They have the exact same body shell. There is literally no difference. It is just the stickers applied to them. So manufacturers hate it because you're like, okay, cool, you've removed all of our brand identity.
Yeah, and you can't go and buy one. You can't, like, if you go into a delership and say, okay, I want to buy an Impala or a Fusion, make it as much like this as you can. I mean, come on.
We just got an email where a guy wants us to leave Patreon for Substack.
No, dudes, come on.
You don't want to compete with Greenwald?
Graham Linehan?
How tall is Greenwald?
I don't know.
How tall is Graham Linehan? He's not that. He's British. He's probably like 5 feet
Graham
tall.
Linehan I could take in a fight.
Yeah, I think we could probably fight Graham Linehan.
I don't even need to know how tall he is. I'm pretty confident. There's like a lot
just
of
on vibes alone.
He doesn't strike me as someone who would be very good at fighting.
Who, Graham Linehan or Greenwald?
No,
to be honest.
I think I would put more money on Greenwald than Linehan.
Oh yeah, I make no claims about being able to beat Greenwald in a fight.
Yeah. I think that would be a more of a crapshoot. Yeah.
I think like more disputes need to be settled in a sort of like kumite martial arts tournament of elimination kind of like way, and therefore I'm suggesting now a sort of a takes kumite. We fly everybody to an island, Bruce Lee style rather than Epstein style. Everybody gets like a fucking like one piece jumpsuit, and whoever can land the most flying kicks to defend their takes gets to like win Twitter.
Yes. And
it would be healthier than whatever the fuck we're currently doing.
Absolutely. Like 20 pundits enter, one leaves.
Yeah, I'd watch that.
Absolutely.
I'd participate. Are you kidding me? Jeez. Sounds like a great way to get my mentions to be politer.
You have to be nice to me or I'll fly you to an island and
yeah, what's up? You're really gonna at me right now? Instead of the like most people don't send tweets like this notification, Twitter sends you a notification that's like, are you ready to enter the dragon?
Yes, and then a helicopter touches down in your backyard right then. All right, get in.
We're going to Tank Island.
Never trust your mutuals. Only your fists will help you.
I have always liked the idea of the Nate Bethea extended universe like has to fight its way out.
Yes.
So it's just like me and Joe, because we're the biggest, have to run point.
Yeah, it's the Nate Bethea extended universe against the world, and I give us pretty good odds, to be honest.
Oh god.
Although I guess since this is motorsport theme, we're really more like Scuderia Nate Bethea.
Yes.
I will also challenge anyone who wants to battle for take supremacy to an auto race. That I'm pretty sure I could beat Glenn Greenwald around a racetrack.
Instead of pink slips, it's your Twitter account.
Race for blue checks.
Fuck, that's so good. Yes.
Yeah, I don't have one yet, and I don't want one, but I would take one if it meant that I had stolen.
You would take one as a sign of victory.
Yes. Yeah. If it were a trophy to be won in battle, I would gladly accept one.
I worked long and hard, put in many late hours at the Takes Dojo for this. blue check.
I feel like you should be able to like collect them if you like own someone hard enough. You should have. I should be able to get like a necklace of blue checks that I've gotten off of pundits, like I'm in the fucking Phoenix program.
Bad Company 2 with the dog tags. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine how many blue checks Drill would have after his name?
Oh my god, Jesus! It'd be like one of those fighter planes with like the silhouettes on the side. Yeah.
We need to call. Who runs Twitter now? It's not Jack.
No. I forget who the new CEO is.
I would be adding Jack right now if he still ran the place and be like, hey man,
absolutely,
let's work on this. It would be great for engagement. Like who doesn't join Twitter with some sort of bloodlust to punch someone else in the face at their heart? Like nobody on that site is nice, myself included.
The car of tomorrow.
Oh yeah,
yes.
I'm sorry.
No, this is good.
You know what? It's 2:00. This is a perfect time for a glass of wine. I'll be right back.
Bonus episode. This is the bonus episode vibes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very unstructured, free-form discussion about NASCAR.
I'm just appreciating all of the sponsors on these cars. I like that you have like DuPont and the National Guard and the 2010 census. Just to me, that's great.
And then 3M for some reason.
Post-its. Because when I think of going 200 miles an hour around an oval, I think of Post-it notes.
Do you also think of the 2010 census?
Yes, and the National Guard, Pepsi Max, Tissot watches.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is again like, so because they ruined the whole sport by making all the cars identical, going to lower high horsepower and higher downforce, which makes the race kind of more
like F1.
Yeah, less chaotic, less enjoyable, much more like F1, which is not fun or enjoyable. And also, you know, all of this is kind of when like it becomes a bit more like it's no longer the Winston Cup. It's now like Nextel or something, which that dates it. Yeah. And so you're
back the cigarettes.
Your big hero of this era.
The people want cigarettes.
Oh God! Can you imagine like a trans lady racing in NASCAR with like an American Spirits car? Fucking cool as shit. Hey, don't look. I have my vices. Don't shit talk them.
Have the decency to smoke Reds, you fucking baby.
I smoked Reds all the time. I smoked, and it was only because like you couldn't get Lucky Strikes anymore. Like they just disappeared en masse. So
I mean, American Spirits are my cigarette of choice because they last like 3 times as long. So I'm
sure
saving money.
Stereotypes are hurtful facts.
But yeah, so you kind of become more corporate. So like your big winner during this era is Jimmy Johnson, who very nice guy, has the personality of like a bar of soap. You know,
he's not exciting at all. He
wins 7 championships in like 10 years. One of the most dominant race car drivers of all time.
Feeling like a white Lewis Hamilton with all the boredom that implies.
Yes.
Yeah, and no one cares. Like everybody's like, yeah, he's nice, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And so NASCAR goes through this era of like trying to artificially make the racing interesting again. So we start getting the playoff series, which is stupid and contrived, and stage racing, which is a modern thing. But basically, they throw a caution at a predetermined point in the race, bunch everybody back up, and then have them go again. Sort of like F1 does when Toto feels like it, because it's the only way to make the sport interesting. Then we also got Rovals, which are kind of cool.
What is a Roval?
Roval is a road course oval. So like they turn both ways, but they still race in a big banked section for part of it.
Okay.
They're kind of cool, but like it's also very chaotic because they're still trying to get the cars like figured out for that. And most of these guys, you know, admittedly are not great at turning both ways. I will I will admit that.
Have they considered spicing up the race with items? Such as
I think they should add like obstacles, like you just string some like those stingers that police have to like bust tires off cars.
That would
just
be pretty
throw
good.
those out at random. Yeah.
You could put down an oil slick Because
dropping banana peels out of my NASCAR Gen 7.
Exactly.
They should make NASCAR more like Takeshi's Castle. That's my contention to you.
You maybe could throw a blue shell. I don't know if those work in real life.
You're telling me that in the year of our Lord 2022, you can't make a Trackmania track in real life.
That's a good point.
I think you could. I think it could be done. Could, must, should,
must.
And will before the end of this decade.
Could or should, but must.
We choose to build the tracks from Trackmania not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Yeah, I've seen some of those tracks, and I think the support structures are sketchy.
I mean, that just adds to the tension. And besides, this is what a troubled nation needs to come out of recession and depression and pandemic, is to watch a NASCAR full 50 stories out of an inverted loop.
Yeah, honestly, it would be cool. One of the things NASCAR is working on right now is to try to be more inclusive as a sport. It would be super cool.
Baby.
It'd be cool if they could do that, and then our big America's big unification post-pandemic, pivot to communism would be we all kind of unite around NASCAR. That's my dream world.
I'll second that.
People's Republic of NASCAR.
Oh God, it would be cool too if instead of a Trabant or a Lada or whatever, our national, the car that we make, and we just you sign up for a car and you get one of these, is just a fucking NASCAR stock car. Oh, are you a family? We'll strap a child booster into the roll cage.
We have a wagon version. Shut up.
Well, you got to have the kids climb out the window. They'll probably enjoy that.
Oh yeah, I forgot these things don't have doors, do they?
Yeah, no, they haven't since the 60s.
They don't have doors. They don't have windows. I mean, it's literally like a carbon fiber shell over an engine and a tube frame, right?
Mm-hmm. That's a stock car, as they say. Yeah. Go down to your dealer and pick one up.
I too have watched the Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah, that's all I got for the car of tomorrow. It sucked and it ruined the sport. And I'm praying that the next generation car, which supposedly some people have driven and kind of I will say I follow Bozy Tatarevic, who is a mechanic and autosports journalist, and he's had some promising things to say about it. It's supposed to give cars their brand identity back while not being too expensive to break in with. So hopefully you get new teams, hopefully you get new manufacturers coming in. But they haven't really raced a lot with them yet, so it's hard to say if it's going to be entertaining or not.
Are NASCAR drivers still boring?
Some of them, yes. Some of them are basically seconds away from murder any given day.
Huh.
Yeah, I would say on the whole, they're mostly kind of they're definitely packaged for advertisers, with the exception of Kyle Larson, who dropped the N-word and then still has a career somehow. But I don't know. I mean, you have some people who one of the biggest personalities, one of the people I admire greatly is Bubba Watson, who is, one of the only black drivers in the modern era of the sport. And he has received insane amounts of hate and, controversy for saying such things as, Black Lives Matter, and talking about how police are more violent towards black men and women in the United States. Those are considered insanely controversial in the world of NASCAR. So it kind of a weird baseline for controversy where saying the N-word is fine, but, advocating for human rights is totally not. But I guess in that regard, it's a lot like F1.
Yes.
Sure. Oh, but I mean, at least you don't have a NASCAR, you don't have a NASCAR race in Qatar or in Saudi Arabia.
No, but you have a bunch in Texas, and
basically identical. Yeah, lending legitimacy to the theocratic regime of Texas.
I genuinely have to get my shit out of that state before they repeal Lawrence v. Texas, because I won't be able to go back.
Let's talk about the politics of NASCAR. And I mean, I wrote this slide, there's very little on it because it's it's a bonus episode, and I figured we'd have more sort of free-form discussion.
Well, I also spent an hour and 10 minutes talking about cars because you invited the ADHD translating on the episode. So, what did you expect?
So here we have a Realtree car. Realtree being a sort of brand of hunting camouflage that briefly became a sort of like class signifier in American culture for a bit, sort of.
Yes, dude.
I mean,
they sell Realtree hoodies at Costco now, so.
Yeah, I guess it's more of like an urban, rural, or wants to be perceived as rural thing. But like, I feel like a lot of American political history in the 20th century, now into the 21st, can be understood as this process of like what was a like white working class becoming a sort of a petty bourgeois, like a sort of a local gentry, as the working class itself became more and more like diverse. And then in order to reinforce that sort of like newly found bourgeois stuff of like, say, owning a home after the GI Bill, the way that you defended that as a white American was to do white supremacy and to become more like culturally reactionary. And I think you can sort of you can locate NASCAR within that as something that used to be something that was for poor people, mostly poor white people, but still not exclusively, and then sort of became this like bastion of reaction, and up to the point of fucking Reagan going.
Yeah,
there.
I'll buy that, and I think that's we see that in the sort of tactical bros. Like I like guns as much as the next person, but the sort of Barbies for grown men with what they've done to my poor sweet child, the AR. It's the trappings to people who are like, yeah, I love Waffle House, but like it's that same shit as always, where like your average Trump voter, whoever, is a guy who fucking owns 6 Applebee's franchises, not a guy,
Well, and it's tied to the rest of car culture in the United States, right? Like car culture in the United States,
super reactionary.
Well, but the thing is, you look at it from the same kind of perspective. Look at American graffiti as a cultural standpoint. It was supposed to be a bunch of teenagers souping up hot rods or whatever, and then hot rods became literally so expensive that you could only own one if you had a retirement fund and like several properties you rented.
And that's what the boomers did with my sweet vans.
Yeah, and trucks. And now we have the massive like lifted crew cab trucks with tiny little tires
that can't get anywhere.
Yeah. It's like it's an expensive
rear-wheel drive, idiots.
What I'm curious about is whether NASCAR conforms with the AR-15 or the crew cab pickup truck and being something that purports to be authentic and cheap, but is very expensive.
Races are pretty cheap, to be honest.
Yeah, it's more expensive to participate as a team now, which is part of the whole reason for the next generation cars. They're trying to bring down average costs, but it's still pretty cost effective to go to races, especially if you're not like I haven't tried to go to one in ages because I'm not trying to die of COVID, and the audience that loves this does not like wearing masks. Just I think that goes without saying. But it wasn't too bad when I went to like the road course race. It was like, I don't know, $30 general admission, and I got to watch racing cars all day at a road course. It's fucking awesome.
That's what sucks too about stuff like where like dirt track racing is cool as hell, but the people who enjoy it make the Let's Go Brandon folks essentially. You can just say fuck. You can just say fuck.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, this is a bonus episode, so I can say it because I'm not going to get my mentions filled. Fuck Joe Biden is the correct way that an adult says it.
That's right.
It's funny because like leftists will say it. I don't get this country. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, go ahead.
So NASCAR has this like sort of like regional identity to it too, right? Like it's positioned a lot of the time as a southern thing, as a red state thing.
Despite the fact that there are races very much in the Northeast.
Yeah, yes. and as like a rural thing, right? And therefore you get things like people bringing Confederate flags to races in states that were always part of the Union, right?
Yeah, but like, here's the thing, Alice, and I feel bad because like I want you to come visit, and I'm going to tell you basically never to come visit. But when I was on my trip through the U.S., there was no correlation between whether a state was Union or Confederate and how many Confederate flags I saw. It's literally
it's just a shorthand for white supremacy.
Like, Illinois is full of them. The literal place that has Land of Lincoln on their license plate is full of Confederate flags because it's literally just a shorthand for I'm a racist piece of shit and I feel safe saying it.
I think I see fewer of them in the actual South than in some rural parts of
the
northern states.
The South is a lot less white.
Yeah,
is one thing.
Yes, exactly.
Well, and the other thing too that I noticed is like the United States is like NASCAR is a really good sort of slice of the culture war because NASCAR itself, as an identity, as a company, as an organization, whatever you want to call it, is trying very hard to broaden their base. They recognize that they cannot rely on the same, Applebee's owners forever, and they really do need to bring in personalities like Bubba Watson and, make a stand for LGBT people at their races, which they've done recently. They've tried to be inclusive and open, but their fan base that's been around for, the past 10, 15, 20 years, whatever, is very anti this. This is political to them.
Yes.
Literally anybody, it's the anything that isn't a white cishet man is political. That is a political identity. So what happens with NASCAR and what happens a lot in the US is the strongest ideological conflicts, the times where people are the most violent about their conservative beliefs are when they feel like it is even mildly threatened. So like in the North, you see Confederate flags because there is some token opposition to that. There are people who are like, hey, maybe racism isn't good, and they feel attacked by it. And so they have to more forcefully signal their ideology. Like the Central Valley of California is fucking terrifying because everyone is, because they're surrounded by, relatively blue areas and the whole state votes blue. So they feel like
they're under siege by libs in the People's Republic of California.
And so they are absolutely much more open and much more forceful about signaling their political beliefs. And NASCAR is kind of entering the same space. Like NASCAR banning the Confederate flag probably got more people to bring Confederate flags to races than were bringing them before, because
they banned it in 2020.
Yes, but it's about making a point for these people. It's like, no, this is mine. I want to show off to the people who are trying to make this a more welcoming place that it's actually not. Like I believe this should be a violent place, an exclusionary place just for me. And NASCAR is a perfect microcosm of it.
Space, if you like.
Yes.
But by the fact of you having a car in this race that says Black Lives Matter on the side, you are taking away something from me, which is my ability to enjoy my belief that they don't, in a sort of like unconfronted, untroubled way.
Yes. Yeah. So I would say, and NASCAR just happens to be the best way to showcase this because the sponsors are so visible, and like it has been primarily like a Southern cultural thing for a while.
And it triggers the libs. It's like, it's cars, they're noisy, they go fast, there's a shit ton of emissions.
Yeah.
It
is based, and it does anger liberal people.
Yeah, that's true. Liberals do hate things that are cool, but also like
NASCAR
for the
as
like
a shorthand when they mean, and it's interesting because they mean the rural poor.
Yeah,
when they're
absolutely.
like NASCAR watching blah blah blah, because there's nothing liberals hate more than poor people.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're completely right. It's the same thing with like people who do these biopics on Trump supporters. Like they just have economic anxiety, and they flew on a private. Well, and they flew to January 6th on a private jet. It's missing the point of who is really the most entrenched about this bullshit.
Yeah, but it's a good way for those people who are entrenched and who do have a lot of resources to push people who are poor and who can be radicalized into this by being like, listen, they want to take away your ability to watch a car go fast.
Yeah, and I don't know, I'm pretty far left. If somebody tried to come for NASCAR, like, oh, let's ban NASCAR, I'd be like, you don't have a United States then. This is the one cultural thing that we've ever developed that was worth keeping. NASCAR is more important
is
than
physically
Apollo.
going to come to your house, take your guns, and make you. She's going to break your TV so that you can only watch Ellen instead of NASCAR.
Oh God!
But we also have to talk about another American thing, which is next slide, please. Alongside the NFL, which is. Episode in itself. One thing that NASCAR loves.
I'll actually write that one. I'll write an NFL episode.
is the troops. And the troops love NASCAR back because it's a great way to get free PR for a lot of people who are already very primed to like shows of patriotism and like aggressive masculinity. And therefore, you can spend a shit ton of money getting, the fucking Blue Angels to fly over, or parachute some guys in and, thank a bunch of people for their service, or for that matter, drive around in a car that says, hey, join the military on it. And people do because it's effective recruitment.
Absolutely.
Well, and again, if you want to really get into a class-based discussion of this, like, there are still people who are, I have friends who joined the military because it was the only way for them to go to college. Like, those people like NASCAR in the same way that like I did as a kid growing up in West Virginia. You're basically, reaching out to people who in some cases are genuinely poor and don't have a way out, and being
Absolutely.
like, hey, we have a way out. You just have to go, be treated as an expendable resource for our colonialism for a decade. And then we'll maybe allow you to like get dental care into your 30s.
Absolutely, because it's cool. And speaking of that, I have another slide, my last one that I wrote, of stuff that like we can derive about the NASCAR fan base from what people want to market to them.
Yep.
And I've put these into general sort of categories, and you can sort of see the theme here of like disaffected and poor, disproportionately young men. And then disproportionately wealthy older men.
Yes.
And so you have scams like joining the military on the one hand, but also stuff like Bitcoin. And the apotheosis of this, the Bitcoin, the novelty form of crypto based around the phrase, let's go Brandon,
which originated
Brandon
in
himself,
NASCAR.
Yeah. Yes. Do you want to talk about Let's Go Brandon?
I really don't, but I will. It started because I forget the guy's last name even. Some guy named Brandon won a race, and everybody on camera.
I want to say, but I could be wrong.
Everybody on camera during the Fox News interview, where they're talking to him after the race, was chanting "fuck Joe Biden," like adults, I should know. And the reporter was like trying to cover for this and said they were saying, "Let's go Brandon." And then the American right decided this was the funniest thing they'd ever heard in their entire lives. And basically,
second joke, and this was it.
Yeah, and so now the guy who they were chanting for, whose career has been irreparably marred by association with this, it was trying to get the Let's Go Brandon Bitcoin sponsorship on his car. NASCAR is still up in the air as to whether they're going to allow it. Initially, it was said it was approved. Now they're saying it's not. It doesn't matter. It's one of those things where it's like the worst people in the world have already associated these two things. And so now indelibly, like after a decade of boring racing, when no one watches and no one goes to events, all that a normal non-NASCAR brained person is going to think of when they think of NASCAR is, oh yeah, they hate Joe Biden and they're insanely conservative.
Wrong reasons, yes.
Yeah.
And what's really funny is that Brandon himself, Brandon, whose last name I don't remember, Brandon X, was initially quite hesitant about this, right? He was like, I don't want to be associated with people saying fuck Joe Biden with my name. And then he, 6 months later, or not even 6 months, like 2 months later, he put out this announcement of delivery, and the video of it, it looks like someone has him at gunpoint.
Yeah, they probably, they basically do, because no one will sponsor this guy because they don't want to be seen as associated with this cultural phenomena. And so the dude just wants a seat. He's a good driver. Like, he can't, you have to have a sponsor to race in NASCAR. It's just the mechanics of how this works. And so he's basically being held at gunpoint. It's like your career is going to be over because of a Fox News or a Fox Sports accidental take on what people were saying in the background after you won. And this is like the only way for him to continue to have a career. I still don't think he should have done it, but at the same time, like, I do pity him. This is a terrible situation to be stuck in.
Well, also the fact that it's a cryptocurrency means that it's an obvious scam that's going to collapse within any amount of time.
But like anybody who gives them money deserves to have less money. The biggest downside of it is that they're not giving it directly to me first.
You can see this sort of generational divide, though, between the special forces and Monster Energy on the one hand, and Viagra and Joe Biden Bitcoin's Iraqi dinars on the other, right?
Yeah,
and it's like, that's not enough. That's not enough to sustain any sport. You need to get, more people watching than just people who are going to try and join the special forces, fail and get, put into like blanket stacking school, and people whose dicks don't work.
But that's the problem, isn't it?
How
Like,
you really feel, Alice?
I mean, that's the problem, though. Is like NASCAR has had a couple of initiatives in the past year or two to like reach out to queer people, and they talk about it, and it's like, cool. Do you think maybe I won't get hate crime going to one of your races? And the answer is always kind of like, meh.
LGBT coin. Also,
oh,
I do want to talk about. I do want to talk about the Special Forces car for one thing, which is a particularly evil facet of United States Army recruiting, which is so when you enlist in the U.S. military, you can specify an MOS, a military occupational specialty, that you want to try and do, and they don't guarantee you it. It's a preference that you put down, right? Special Forces MOSs all start with 18, and it's 18 and then a letter. And they added at some point during the War on Terror an MOS called 18X, which was like Special Forces aspirant or something. And the deal was you enlisted and they would send you straight out of basic training onto the Special Forces selection course, which you would inevitably fail. Like, absolutely 100% of the time you would fail this, but the deal was they would give you the shot, right?
Sure.
Something that ordinarily you would have to, you would apply for after spending such and such number of years in the military enlisted already. But you would just do that straight out of the gate. And then once you failed, although they phrased it as if, then they could just kind of like reassign you at their discretion.
I'm sorry, Alice. I'm simply built different.
But it was this perfect feeder channel for a lot of like alienated young men who are like, yeah, I'm going to be a Special Forces Army Ranger, and who of course would not, and were then just able to be put anywhere. So I think about that a lot, and I think about that as like an exemplar of US military recruitment, and they put it on in NASCAR as well. So
that's pure evil.
Mm-hmm. And that's all the slides I had written. Victoria, I believe you had one more.
I did. I just wanted to end the episode on a really dark and unsettling note about normative determinism. So this
guy's head is entirely square.
Yeah, this is a very square-headed man. Yes,
SpongeBob square.
That was rendered on a PS1.
God damn it! He's half Roblox.
This was from the like high aerodynamic era of ears.
Well, he needed it because his car didn't have it. So if you'll notice, also his car still has doors, so we can just definitively paint this as a Gen 1 car. That is a Ford 500 Galaxy, I think. So like a 64. Like this is right before the end of the Gen 1, strictly stock era, where you would basically, have a dealer. You'd commission a guy to paint the dealer name on the side of the car, and then you'd go race around a track and hope you didn't die. The reason that this man is of note is because he was named. His name is Edward Roberts. He was nicknamed Fireball sometime in the 40s for reasons that are unclear. But on May 24th, 1964, his car crashed into the wall and ignited in a fireball, and he died of his burns. NASCAR would, of course, not do anything about this, and they took like another half a decade to mandate fire retardant suits. But just the dark irony of somebody being nicknamed Fireball and then dying in one 20 years after they were given the nickname is, it seemed on theme for the show.
Dale Basilar skull fracture Earnhardt.
Oh God, I can't laugh at that one yet. It's too soon. It's too soon. 9/11 isn't too soon.
They call me Colin Helicopter Crash McRae.
See, that's the thing. I made a joke about the Mont Blanc tunnel fire the other day, which happened in 1999. Like 50 people died, and it was like, yeah, this is probably okay to make a joke about. I can't make a joke about Dale Earnhardt. I don't know what it is. I don't know if that's
Did
weakness
you
or
watch Mont
strength.
Blanc on TV?
No.
Yeah, it's called trauma.
Yes.
No,
Women will literally record an hour and a half long podcast about NASCAR instead of going to therapy for their unresolved Dale Earnhardt trauma.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I went to therapy yesterday.
Huh.
Sucks.
The last time I tried going to therapy, and this is just an aside about kind of the state of the U.S.
Oh, no, please.
I went to a therapist in Houston, Texas, who was covered by my insurance at the time that I actually had, which I don't anymore. I'm a writer. I think that's clear. But the last therapist I went to told me that the problem that was wrong with me, the reason that I was so fucked up and sad or whatever, was because I was trans. And so I needed to see somebody who would make me not be trans. He basically referred me to conversion therapy. And that was the last time I tried therapy.
Yeah.
What you gotta do? What you gotta do is you gotta get the kind of therapy that doesn't work, like not the kind like conversion therapy where it's actively hostile to you, but also not the kind of therapy where you like seriously engage with your problems. What you gotta do is you gotta get the kind of therapy that the NHS gives you in the UK, which is like a lady in a nice cardigan like hands you a printed out sheet that says, "Have you tried mindfulness?" and then you leave. Like that shit is easy. I'm like number one bracket. I'm undefeated at that kind of therapy. The kind of therapy where I have to think and like talk about shit and get sad. Absolutely not. No, this
don't love it.
No, actually like working on yourself and confronting your own mental health. Absolutely not. What's easy? Taking a look at a printout that has like 2 breathing exercises on it, say, "I'll definitely do those," put it in the trash on the way out and go home. That shit is so fucking easy. It's simple. It's beautiful. I love it.
Why do you think I became a writer? It's so I don't have to work on my personal problems.
Exactly.
Like, this is my solution. Instead of going to therapy, I'll just make it everyone else's problem.
So what have we learned about NASCAR in the last hour and a half?
Better than F1.
Yes.
I don't agree with you. However,
see, here's the thing. Do you aspire to go to an F1 race?
I mean, no.
Okay. Well, I'll take you to one NASCAR race, which we'll be able to do for like $35. And then we'll eat like shitty hot dogs and watch V8 engine race cars rip around a track for like 5 hours straight. And you'll be like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen.
And it will be.
Checkmate.
Yeah.
Checkmate,
right,
Britain.
Fine. It's a date. Fine. If the people want more Victoria, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter, and they shouldn't, but they can at Mikuru Beahina.
Just rolls right off the damn tongue.
Really. Bass username.
I know. I made it because I was trying to make it so no one would find it back when I was an egg, and then I accidentally transitioned and realized that became my whole identity. And here I am with an unpronounceable username. And I write for The Drive and Jalopnik and Car Bibles, and I take a lot of pictures.
Wherever good blogs are sold.
The other thing too, I can actually hype this now. I have a book coming out later this year. Hopefully, I'm shooting for an October or November kind of release date. But the whole goal is kind of a trans-femme-oriented style and fashion lookbook with an automotive twist. So I'm doing my own photography. I'm doing all my own writing. I'm trying to do as much diversity of style and person as possible to kind of give this aspirational sort of you can be this too sort of handbook. Aesthetic goals for my community. So that's my big project for the year.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you for subscribing to our Patreon. And we will be back with another mainline episode on We Don't Fucking Know What Yet.
Yes.
And another bonus episode on question mark.
Question mark, yes.
I'll do the NFL.
I actually do think you should do the Mont Blanc tunnel disaster. It's great.
A regular episode, though.
It has been a minute since we've done a tunnel disaster, and those are always horrifying.
The best part of it is that the whole fire was started by a truck full of margarine, which is the most French shit I can imagine.
She drives the margarine in the tunnel. I've had 6 drinks of pastilles already this morning.
Thanks for having me on. I always have fun.
Yeah. Absolute pleasure.
I'm hungry. End it.
Oh, all right.
Bye,
NASCAR.
everybody.
Yes. NASCAR.